I'm going to sort of tell you what we're going to be doing, or what the goal is, at least for this first part. We have a server so far, and it's Gropa is our domain. And this server that we have created, we've put Active Directory on here. We put an Active Directory. This has become our domain controller. The domain controller is the computer that's sort of the gatekeeper for our domain. Everything within the domain, now as people log in, they're going to log into the domain controller, and that will give them access to various other servers, even the workstations themselves. If they're part of the domain, are controlled by the domain controller as far as what they can do and what access they have. Right now our computers are on the outside of the domain, and we want to bring them into the domain. I'm not sure if I'm able to do this. Into the domain by joining the domain. So we're connecting. It's a standalone computer at this point. We want to join the domain so that so we can use the resources that are provided through the domain. So that's kind of the concept of what we're going to be working on. A lot of things have been going on. I'll try to take it slow. Please ask questions along the way. It's several steps. Hopefully I don't miss any along the way. Please be patient if I do, because I might have to go back and fix something along the way. Starting up VMware Workstation. I'm going to open up my virtual machine, and I'm going to be opening up my my main server. So up here it's just named Server 2012 GUI, but it really is our domain controller. It's our first one that we're working with. We're going to be having a lot of machines running, so we probably want to be checking out the memory. I have this set to 2 gigs. That's probably going to be fine. If I keep each of my workstations, virtual machines at 2 gigs, I should be working well. I know some people bump these up to like 4. You're not going to be able to run 4 gig virtual machines. We only have 16 gigs total, so it's just not going to work out. So check on that. Number of processors really isn't going to make a difference. I am going to take a snapshot before I power this on, just in case anything goes wrong. I can always go back to it. And for lack of anything else, well, I'll put pre-join domain. And then I'm going to power on this machine. I'm going to get my other machines going as well, so I'm going to be also opening. So I'm going to do File, Open. And I'm going to be choosing my GUI 2, which is my second server that we're working with. So the first thing I'm going to be working with is joining my second server into my domain. I've put it in the server pool. We believe that we've done that in class, where we can manage it and we can tell what resources on, but it's really not integrated into Active Directory until we join Active Directory. So I'm going to open this one as well. And it's going to be really slow because my other server is still booting. I have 2 gigs of memory on here on a single processor, and I'm going to be taking another snapshot here, calling it pre-join domain, just so I know where things are at. Once we join the domain, you have to make sure that you keep all your machines at the same state. If you decide to say, you know what, I'm going to revert one of my images back to, one of my virtual machines back to my pre-join domain state, you better make sure you make all of them back to that same state. Otherwise, you're going to have some devices saying, hey, I've joined the domain, and the server on the other side said, nope, nobody's joined to my domain yet, and it's going to get all messed up. It's a two-way link, so make sure that if you want to redo these or just practice again or something goes wrong, bring them all back to this pre-join domain state and then rejoin and rebuild after that. This one's going, so I can start it up. I did copy it. It's going to be slow, so we'll just take our time. So if I take a look at these machines right now, if I go to my main server, I'm going to put these in full screen. I like doing the Control-Alt-Enter, putting it in full screen. If I need to switch my virtual machines, I can go bring my mouse up to the top. It shows which machines I have. I can click on whichever one I want. I want my first one, And when I log in, if I do Control-Alt-Insert to log in here, you're going to see that you are logging into the domain and not into the local machine any longer. So that should be the case. I'm entering in with password, capital P-A $W0RD. Server Manager should automatically launch, giving time for the Server Manager to load. Once this is up, I can click on Configure this local server. And if all looks right, the computer name should just be called Server 1. Just that's what we called it. A lot of people will call it DC for domain controller, or Gropa DC, or something to indicate that this is the domain controller. We just call it Server 1. And I am part of the domain gropa.com. Let me switch over to my other server now, the Windows Server 2012 GUI 2, and sign in. Control-Alt-Insert. And again, by clicking on Configure this local server, I should see that I'm not part of the domain, that I'm just part of the workgroup. What we need to do here in order to actually join the domain is do some IP configuration changes. We need to resolve the name Server 1. So if I want to join the domain or gropa.com, it has to know where gropa.com is, and so the whole DNS configuration has to point to the DNS server of where that information is located, and that is on Server 1. If I look over on Server 1, if I look at Configure this local machine, the name of the server is Server 1, the domain is Gropa, and as soon as I installed Active Directory, it really wants to install DNS, and it did install DNS for us. That allows Gropa to be resolved somewhere as opposed to having to work with IP addresses all the time. So if that's the case, what I need to do is underneath my Ethernet settings for any additional devices is I need to change the DNS configuration for IP version 4 properties to point to that server, not to the default gateway. We don't want it to be forwarded out to the gateway and then out to the school's DNS or your home DNS or your internet service provider's DNS, because that's not going to know anything about Gropa. So we need to change our preferred DNS actually to the server that contains the DNS. And that's going to be 192.168.118.11. And if we forget what our server's IP address is, we can just go back to our Server 1, and we can see that it is 192.168.118.11. So I go ahead and change this on my second server, and I click Close. So at this point, I'm actually able to join the domain. So right now I'm part of the work group, and if I click on the work group, it brings up the System Properties dialog box, the place where you would change a computer name typically. So I want to change it from, say Server 1 to Domain Controller, or, Win7-XXX1234 to Paul's PC. The same place that you change the computer name is where you also change whether it's part of a domain or not. We already called it Server 2. Server 2 is a great name for the server. We just want to be part of a domain. So we click on Domain instead of the workgroup. And now which domain do you want to join? It's going to be gropa.com. When you click OK, it's going to say, hey, how are you going to log in? You can't just join this without permission. So I need some account who is authorized to allow you to join the domain. Well, in this case, it happens to be the administrator, but it could be other accounts. Maybe you don't want to be giving out the administrator's password to everybody that wants to join a domain. There might be a specific account that has just enough permissions to allow a computer to join a domain without giving them complete administrator privileges. We haven't done that, so we're just going to use the administrator account, and we're going to assume that you are going to this computer to set this up, not just giving out the password to the user saying, oh yeah, join our domain. By the way, here's our admin password. And it should be administrator is looking at the Gropa domain, and then password capital PA $$W0RD. When I click OK, Oh, my SIDs are the same. Ah, well, that'll be a problem. Let's try it. Short of creating a new one, let's just try to run. And what do you need to run? Let's see, it's not working. Oh, it's going to be... Oh, I can't run it from there. Oh, let's try this. Can do it from the command prompt. Run as administrator. And C:\Windows system 32 /sysprep, and sysprep should be the program. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Oh. Okay.
Enter out-of-box experience and
then generalize. Okay. We'll do it this way. So, going to the command prompt, Windows system 32 sysprep, run sysprep. Keep the enter system out-of-box experience, and then generalize. Click OK, and it should reboot your computer. After the machine reboots, it says under settings, I accept a license for using Windows. Click accept. The settings are all fine. Next. Administrator password, I would definitely keep this the same. Capital P-A $$W0RD. Control insert to log in. We'll probably have to set up our IP addressing again.
No, you're joining the sense mark.
I'm looking at configuring this local machine.
Oh, now I got to change the computer name.
And I have to change the computer name and the IP addressing. Time zone stayed the same though, so it didn't mess with the time zone, which is good. So I guess I'm going to change the IP address first, because then I'll change the computer name and work group at the same time, because it's the same dialog screen. So change the IP address. Just confirming we did 192.168.118.13 for this server. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Default gateway, how do you get off this network? And that's VMware's default gateway, which is 192.168.118.2. And then the preferred DNS is pointing to server 1, which holds the DNS records for Garopa.com. So that'd be 192.168.118.11.
So this one should point to this. Mine's still right.
I'm going to click OK. So that should fix my IP addresses. Refresh the screen. Click refresh. And here's my IP address information. Now you can change the computer name and workgroup at the same time. By clicking either of those, it brings you to the system's property page. Click the change button. And first of all, I'm going to change the computer name, and I'm going to name it back to server 2. And I'm going to be joining the domain at the same time. Garopa.com. Type it again as administrator. And welcome to the Garopa.com domain. So, clicking OK. It does want to make you restart your computer. Click OK, close, and we might as well restart now so that we will actually join the domain.
Not even install anything yet.
After rebooting the computer, it comes back up, Control-Alt-Insert, and And oh, administrator. Administrator accounts are special. Administrator accounts usually want to log into the local machine. So like later on we have Windows 7, Windows 8 as well. Administrator just says, oh, you log as administrator, you want to log in locally. Any other user that I would choose, so if I click the little switch user button here, if I choose another user, right now it says I'm going to be logging into Garopa. If I type administrator, it says, oh, you want to log into server 2. Because it's the administrator account, that's how you manage your local server. It's the only way you can manage your local server. So if you want to be logging in to the Garopa's administrator account, and they are two separate accounts. The local administrator account is separate than the domain controller's administrator account. You need to add Garopa at the beginning of it. And administrator, again, is the only account that you should have to do that with. Everything else automatically defaults to want to logging into the Garopa domain. So log in as administrator, Garopa / administrator. I log in with password. The recycle bin is corrupt. Do you want to empty it? Okay. Not sure why it's corrupt. By logging in as Garopa's administrator, I'm able to do administration on the entire domain. If I only logged into the server 2 administrator, it only allowed me to do administrative tasks on this specific server only. If I click on configure this local server after this reboots, I can see that my server name is server 2 and I'm part of the domain called garopa.com. So the question is, how do you know that it's joined? By going to server 2. So I'm going to server 2. And if you look under dashboard or under local server, either way, click on configure this local server. The computer name should be server 2 or whatever it's been called. We're very generic, server 1, server 2. Normally it's be like accounting or domain controller or backup server. And then the domain is, this is how you know that you're joined, because it will no longer say work group and then probably work group was the default. It's going to say now you are part of the domain called garopa.com. Now we're going to attempt to do this with our client computers. It's nice having the servers join the domain because now they are actually part of each other. So if I look at my primary server and I look at, well, I can look at all servers, I can see my servers. Now I had joined this before manually. We did this before by joining a non-domain controlled server into our pool so we can manage it. Just by being part of the domain though, now it's going to show up automatically. And so I can manage this. I can tell what services are going to be on there. I can add or remove whatever I want to do.